Hello, everybody. Welcome back. 'Tis a Wednesday. This isn't a Hobby Box Wednesday, but I think I am going to break it into two parts. Just because looking at the last time I did something similar, it took about 45 minutes to get through the entirety of the box, and even with then, I felt a little rushed. But here, a box, and I have been looking forward to this since I got it, of the Washington Chronicles. Historic autograph card company. There's 6 10-card packs, and this is very similar to the 1945 World War II box that my sister got me for Christmas. So I had to go ahead and pull the trigger and get myself one of these. Since there's 6 packs, 10 cards, and a lot of history, I figure, bumped the crap out of that. We're going to do 3 now, and then 3 later. But if I pull some sort of relic, I'm going to put that in the last, because look what you can get. Look at the potential. Look at the potential. This box is filled with potential. That is the potential. History is going to be coming alive. It's interesting. From a historic... here we go. Look for art sketch cards and authentic United States stamp coins. Approximate odds of finding. There we go. Now, I busted... I think it was 1 in 97 the last time I did one of these when I pulled the Gene Tierney quarter coin. So I've got faith that we're going to get something good. So we're going to reach in here. We're going to pull out 3 packs of 10 cards. We're going to do that one. We're going to do this one. And we'll do one in the middle. So there's 3 left. And those 3 will be for next time. And I'm not going to film it immediately after, although I really want to, but I'm going to wait. And that's going to bother me. However, we're going to keep this here for the odds. But as I was saying, it's kind of interesting about George Washington. Really, not much is known about his life prior to the age of about 15 or 16. Like, there really isn't much. Fascinating character to learn about. Okay, doesn't look like there's anything thick in there, but that matters not because something shiny. But it's time for history, so settle in. Pour yourself a chair and pull up a drink, and we're going to have some fun. And we're just going to enjoy Farmer Washington. Look at the art on this. Here we go. George Washington may have been a president and a general, but he saw himself as a farmer first and devoted himself to improving American agriculture. Also, a mule breeder as well. Washington routinely ordered the latest farming books from England, performed scientific experiments for the best practices to increase crop yield, and introduce Spanish mules to the United States. Actually, his line of mules is still in existence in Tennessee, I want to say. Washington grew a variety of crops at Mount Vernon. Wheat was his best cash crop in 1776. He used modern fertilization practices and crop rotation to improve his yield over his 5 farms. Also, this is probably known, but just like most of the Founding Fathers, a hemp farmer. Because kids, let's not forget what the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are written on. That's right, it's hemp. Map. The French and Indian War. Okay, let's see. So Lake Ontario, this is a weirdly drawn New York. I'm right about there, I would say. Right there. There's me. Right by where it says Niagara, give or take. The French and Indian War, 1754 to 63, was fought by the 13 British colonies, population 2 million, against the French colonies, population 60,000. It began with a dispute in 1754 over control of the forks of the Ohio, the confluence of the Allegheny and Monongahela River. Gee, I wonder where that is. Oh yeah, the Point down in Pittsburgh. Washington did spend a lot of time there, owned quite a lot of the city as well. The war's first battle was the Battle of Jumonville Glen, during which Virginia militiamen under the command of 22-year-old George Washington ambushed a French patrol. The British colonists were supported at various times by the Iroquois, Catawba, and Cherokee tribes. The French colonists were supported by Wabanaki, Confederacy member tribes, Abenaki and Mi'kmaq, I think is how you pronounce it, and the Algonquin, Lenape, Ojibwa, Ottawa, Shawnee, and Wyandot tribes. Oh, no, I think it's just Wyandotte. It's not Wyandotte. I think they're in Michigan. Or at least that's where, I think, a city is in Michigan. 2 years into the war in 1756, Great Britain declared war on France, beginning the worldwide 7 Years' War. See, and this is what I mean. 5 minutes in, we've done 2 cards. Elizabeth Willing Powell. Not sure who that is. 1743 to 1830 was a Philadelphia socialite and a confidant to George Washington. She helped convince him to stay for a second term as President of the United States. She was married to Samuel Powell, a 2-time mayor of Philadelphia. Washington commissioned a poem to be written of her 50th birthday. She died at age 86 and is buried next to her husband, who predeceased her by 37 years. God, I love history. What we got? Oh, God, smallpox. That's just unfortunate. Smallpox was raging at the time of the American Revolution. George Washington had survived smallpox, when he was 19, so he knew how it might devastate his army. He required anyone who had not already suffered the disease be vaccinated. The only way to vaccinate at the time was to place infected tissue in a healthy body and hoping the ensuing disease was mild. For Washington, the gambit worked, and smallpox did not ravage the Patriots. Boy, that is a gamble. Doggo! We have Doggo. Doggo wins the day. Lila, British General William Howe's dog. Hello, pupper. Historic pupper. The dog was lost during the Battle of Germantown. I'm sad now. She followed General Washington and the Continental Army home from the battle wearing a collar, identifying her as General Howe's dog. When George Washington found out who the terrier belonged to, he ordered that the dog be returned under surrender flag to the general with a note. The note, written by Washington's aide-de-camp, Alexander Hamilton, there's a name we should know, read, "General Washington's compliments to General Howe. He does himself the pleasure to return the dog which accidentally fell into his hands, and by the inscription on the collar appears to belong to General Howe." Perhaps Washington returned the dog to his enemy because he loved dogs. His legendary honesty, or perhaps it was an opportunity to spy on the British headquarters. Yeah, it could be any of those 3. I know he did like dogs. What is this? The Federalist Party. Oh, God. God, that brings me back to college. The Federalist Papers. Gah. 1789 to 1816. The Federalists wanted a strong central government and a loose interpretation of the Constitution. They favored protective tariffs on imports to encourage commerce and manufacturing and raise money. They wanted a powerful navy. The Federalists believed that American foreign policy should favor British interests. The majority of their support came from New York and New England. Famous Federalists included the authors of the Federalist Papers, my eyes twitching, because I had to read them, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay. Also, Edmund Randolph and James Madison. That's a little typo there. George Washington was sympathetic to the Federalists, but remained, officially nonpartisan. This is true. Party colors were black and white. I don't think I ever actually saw that before. Pardon me. In we go. President's House, Philadelphia. That's a shack right there. The President's House in Philadelphia was located at 6th and Market Streets and served as home to George Washington while he was president. Forgot that. We cannot forget the first capital actually was Philadelphia, and then they moved it to Washington to be kind of central in the colonies. There we go. The 3-story house was rented from financier Robert Morris. Hey, actually, namesake of Robert Morris University in Pittsburgh. Washington had 9 slaves in the house whom he rotated every 6 months. Which way am I turning it? Back to Mount Vernon to prevent their being freed by Pennsylvania law. It was what it was. Not everybody is good and innocent. Let's remember that. Previous to Washington living in the house, it had been headquarters for General Sir William Howe and the British Army. Hey, he of the dog. See, history is all tied together. The Treaty of Greenville. You know that's not going to end well. 1795 settled the Northwest Indian War hostilities between the United States and Chief Little Turtle, a Sagamore of the Miami people. After losing the Battle of Fallen Timbers, the Native Americans were forced to give up most of Ohio and portions of Indiana, Illinois, and Michigan in return for goods such as blankets, utensils, and domestic animals valued at $20,000. Washington signed the Treaty of Greenville, written by General Anthony Wayne on August 3rd, 1795. So many treaties. History is littered with them. Guard against the impostures of pretended patriotism. Interesting quote. In 1796, wrote President George Washington in his presidential farewell address to the nation. He was warning his constituents to pay attention to the motives of politicians. Their patriotism could be false. Alexander Hamilton and James Madison helped Washington write the address. The letter was first published on September 19, 1796, about 10 weeks before the 1796 election. And here we go. We've got... what are these? That's upside down, Zach. It's not a printing plate. It's probably some sort of... it's not a sketch. I don't know. I think it's probably just a really nice foil. It is not... well, one of $1.99, so it's a short print, I would guess. But it is the $1 bill, and that is a beautiful-looking card. The paper dollar first became legal tender in 1862 and bore the portrait of Secretary of the Treasury Salmon P. Chase. The first $1 bill to bear President Washington's likeness was printed in 1869. The dollar bill has changed in size and appearance over the 150 years, but Washington remains on the currency, which makes up roughly 31% of all currency produced in the U.S., and the other 69 is pennies. That was fun. That was a fun pack. Pack number 2. Oh, history, history, history. We love it so. Nope, thought there was a thickness in there, but there is not. But we've got more history. And we will put this over there. The dog and the dollar bill stay up there. Formal schooling of George Washington. Clearly intelligent, George Washington received little formal schooling as a child. Well, not many did back then. His father died when Washington was 11, so he was unable to travel abroad to study, as most well-to-do young men of colonial Virginia did. Since his mother never remarried, Washington was forced to take on many duties of the estate. He was able to teach himself surveying and received a surveyor's license from the College of William and Mary. That's interesting. I did not know that. Here we go. William Bradford. Look at that wig. 1755 to 1795 was the second United States Attorney General appointed by George Washington in 1794. He died in office the following year at the young age of 39. Trained as a lawyer, Bradford rose through the military ranks during the American Revolution until illness forced him to retire in 1779. He went on to argue his first case ever before the Supreme Court, first case ever before the Supreme Court, and substantially reduced the use of the death penalty in Pennsylvania. Dad, did you know that? I actually did not. Sir Henry Clinton. That name sounds vaguely familiar. 1730 to 1795 was a British officer who also sat in the British House of Commons from 1772 to 95. He was the British commander-in-chief in North America during the Revolutionary War following the resignation of General William Howe from that post in 1777. He served for 4 years, ending with the disastrous surrender at Yorktown to the Americans, which actually, weirdly, a friend of mine was asking what I felt the turning point in the American Revolution was. Actually, it wasn't Yorktown, but it made me think of it. I would say the Battle of Saratoga. At that point, maybe that'll pop up in here. But, ooh, there's something. Oliver Wolcott Jr. Oh, I love these. 1760 to 1833 was the second United States Secretary of the Treasury serving under President Washington. He was also the 24th governor of Connecticut and was a pivotal figure in the Only Judge Escaped Slave controversy. Not familiar with that one. He was unable to convince the courts to return her to George Washington, from whom she had escaped. I'm not familiar with that. I'm going to have to read into that. All right, there's something there, so we're going to put that on the bottom. I know you can't see it, but the Judiciary Act of 1789 was written by Oliver Ellsworth of Connecticut and signed by George Washington September 4th, 1789, to establish a federal court system. The court system was to have a Supreme Court of 1 Chief Justice and 5 Associate Justices. The Supreme Court was to rule over all civil actions between states and between states in the U.S. involving ambassadors and other diplomatic personnel. The act also created 13 judicial districts within the current 11 states and the Office of the Attorney General to represent the U.S. before the Supreme Court. A United States Attorney and U.S. Marshal were provided for each judicial district. And that's the thing. We look at what we have now, and we have to remember that's not how it started. Like the process, the whiskey tax. This, folks, is when it began. The whiskey. Oh no, this is a different one. It was the Whiskey Rebellion. I'm sorry. The whiskey tax became law in 1791, the first tax imposed on a domestic product. The tax was intended to offset the large Revolutionary War debt. Although the tax was on all distilled spirits, it became known as the whiskey tax because that was what most people drank, and God bless them for it. The law sparked a whiskey rebellion. Okay, actually, that was the Whiskey Rebellion that continued until 1794 when President Washington employed federal troops to break up the protests. The tax remained in place until 1801. And much like Prohibition later, don't mess with the booze, kids. The Treaty of Greenville, we saw that one before, so we're going to put that there. What do we got here? West Point. Here we go. Way downstate. Ooh, this is a big one. 1778 to present is the oldest continuously occupied military post in the United States. George Washington considered it to be the most important strategic position in America. The place agreed upon to obstruct the navigation of the Hudson River was at West Point. Interesting. The defenses of West Point were designed by Polish military engineer Tadeusz Kościuszko, who served as brigadier general in the Continental Army, the army that preceded the United States. A great iron chain was laid across the Hudson at this point in 1778 in order to prevent British Navy vessels from sailing further up the river, but was never tested by the British. The fort was commanded by and named after Benedict Arnold. After his betrayal of the United States and defection to the British Army, the fort was renamed after General James Clinton. After the Revolutionary War, the remains of the fort fell into disrepair and were eventually demolished to allow for the expansion of the United States Military Academy. And now we have... we've got the one of the family tree. What are the odds there? The family lenticular, that would be it. 1 in 21, odds busted. We got parents John, and who is this? This is Eleanor Custis Lewis. Parents John and Eleanor Calvert Custis. Born March 31st, 1779 in Maryland or Virginia. Siblings Elizabeth, Martha, and George. Interesting. Married Lawrence Lewis on February 22nd, 1799. Children Francis, Martha, and Lorenzo. Died July 15th, 1852 in Audley, Virginia. Eleanor Nellie Park Curtis was raised by her step-grandfather, George Washington, after her father's untimely death. Nellie served as hostess for many of George's presidential events. She served as informal archivist of George Washington's memories and stories after his death. Yeah, because George and Martha never had children of their own. I think he was incapable of having children. But odds have been busted, 1 in 21. We got one more and see, look, this is why I know you're looking at the time if you're still here. This is why I wanted to bust it up into different ones. Surveyor Washington. Pardon me, throat's going dry from all this. George Washington taught himself to survey land by the time he was 13. And by the time he was 13, he was actively surveying for many of the rich in Virginia. By age 17, he had earned a surveyor's license from the College of William and Mary in Virginia. His friendship with the Fairfax family was due to his talents as a surveyor, and with their influence, he was appointed as county surveyor for Culpeper County when he was just 17. He is credited with 199 surveys. That is a lot, I think. They wouldn't have said it. Statesman Washington. There we go. Was the quintessential statesman. He served as a major in the Virginia militia, a colonel in the Virginia regiment, and commanded the Continental Army as lieutenant general during the American Revolution. He also served the Virginia House of Burgesses, the Continental Congress, and the Constitutional Convention. He was the first president of the United States, serving 2 terms and setting many of the precedents still adhered to by current presidents. And he did. There we go, John Adams, the first vice president. I think back in the day, it was the loser became the vice president. Let's see. 1735 to 1826 was a founding father of the United States and its second president. He was the first vice president under George Washington. Yeah, up until they started choosing running mates, I believe it was whomever lost the election became vice president. So there's your silver medal. During his presidency, he built up both the Navy and the Army and signed the controversial Alien and Sedition Acts that made the legal imprisonment and deportation, made legal, the imprisonment and deportation of people from a hostile nation. He lost his bid for a second term as president to Thomas Jefferson. There we go. What do we got here? Battle of Pell's Point. All right. October 18th, 1776, in Eastchester, New York, was part of the New York campaign of the Revolutionary War. Britain's General Howe was ultimately victorious but suffered heavy losses. This battle delayed British movements long enough for General Washington's main army to retreat to White Plains and avoid being surrounded on Manhattan. Very pivotal. And we've got another pupper. Pupper goes up there with his buddy because we love dogs. Federal Hall. Federal Hall in New York City is where George Washington took the oath of office and where the first United States Congress met. It was also the home to the Supreme Court and the presidential offices. It is now a museum that honors the early days of America. I've never been there. I haven't been to New York City in a while. I was there, I think, twice maybe. Vermont. Shout out Vermont. Vermont became a state on March 4th, 1791. On January 15th, 1777, representatives of the New Hampshire Grants, a territory also claimed by New York, declared the independence of Vermont. For the first 6 months of its existence, it was called the Republic of New Connecticut. Later that year, delegates renamed the territory the Vermont Republic. Ethan Allen, leader of the famed Green Mountain Boys, was a large landowner in Vermont, and the state draws its nickname from the Green Mountains, which lie within its boundaries. It was the 14th state admitted to the Union, so the first one after the original 13. 3 more cards, and I think we're going to have to be content with a 1 in 21 for the moment, mind you. Washington's burial site. There we go. George Washington died on December 14th, 1799, leaving instructions that he should be buried at Mount Vernon in a brick tomb he designed when it was finished being constructed. Washington was originally buried in the family crypt at Mount Vernon, but in 1831 the remains of both George and Martha Washington were moved to the new tomb, which is open to the public. I have to go down there and see that. I don't think I ever have. Myth. Battlefield victories. Ooh, we got a myth. Myth. Washington won many battlefield victories. Actually, he didn't. That's the crazy thing, is he really didn't. There was one early on in his career, he was captured so easily that they let him go because they felt bad for him. Contrary to what most people think, George Washington lost many of the battles he fought. In fact, the American Revolution was almost lost until Nathanael Greene's victories in the South, and the French intervened. I think that was around Saratoga. Washington did have a number of strategic victories, such as the Battle of Trenton, that reinvigorated his troops as a pivotal moment in the war to keep them engaged. And our final card for the first half of this, and we're still over 20 minutes. That's perfect. Oh, oof. Winter encampment at Valley Forge. Are these one of six? Do these all have these? No. This looks like another kind of short print thing. I'm going to have to look into that. I'll put it in the description. December 1777 to June 1778. General George Washington moved his Continental Army to Valley Forge in Pennsylvania for the winter of 1777 following a series of morale-crushing losses. Oddly, see previous card. That left the 12,000 patriots hungry, cold, and hopeless. The brutal conditions at the Valley Forge encampment were a true test of American will. Over 2,000 Continental soldiers died due to lack of proper hygiene, food, sanitation, and medical knowledge. I was going to say that is changed very soon. The encampment included 1,500 plus 14-foot by 16-foot log huts built in parallel lines, trenches, military roads, kitchens, and latrines. Prussian officer Friedrich Wilhelm Baron von Steuben trained the troops and put them through Prussian-style drills. The soldiers who survived the encampment emerged as a unified professional European-style army. And also, I think it was also the Prussian general, or he wasn't a general, he became high up, but there was also something involving, I think, maybe the smallpox vaccine as well. But that, actually, because that said 1 of 6, 9, I'm going to put that there. Did any of the others say that? I didn't notice. Did any of you notice? Nope. Nope, nope, nope. Nope, nope. Nope, nope. 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 Nope, no. Okay, weird. So I think it must be some sort of short print. So I'm gonna have to check it out, and I'll put it in the thumbnail. But thank you so much for watching part 1 of the Washington Chronicles on this Wednesday. The next part will be back next Wednesday with the other 3 packs that still remain in here, and we're gonna see if we can bust more odds. And please, 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 hoping against hope, getting for some sort of relic. But we will find out next week. So until then, thank you for joining me. We will see you next time.